The Pacific was a theater of vast ocean distances, carrier decks, and island targets reachable only by air. What follows covers every significant aircraft designed or adapted for Pacific warfare during the Second World War. The Mitsubishi A6M Zero. The A6M Zero was the defining Japanese naval fighter of the war, designed from the outset for the extreme range demands of Pacific carrier operations. Powered by a Nakajima Sakai radial, it reached around 534 kilometers per hour and carried 2 cannon and 2 machine guns. Its light construction gave it exceptional maneuverability and range, but left it without self-sealing fuel tanks or pilot armor. In the early war, it dominated every opponent it encountered. As American fighters improved and Japanese pilot quality declined, its structural vulnerability became fatal. Grumman F4F Wildcat. The Wildcat was the primary American carrier fighter at the war's opening. A stubby, robust monoplane powered by a Pratt & Whitney Twin Wasp radial. Reaching around 531 kilometers per hour, it was outperformed by the Zero in turning fights, but superior in a diving attack. American pilots developed the Thatch Weave, a mutual support tactic specifically to counter Zero's superiority. The Wildcat's rugged construction and self-sealing tanks kept pilots alive in exchanges that the Zero could not survive. It held the line until better aircraft arrived. The Grumman F6F Hellcat. The F6F Hellcat was designed with direct input from combat experience against the Zero, producing a fighter that was faster, better armed, and more survivable than its predecessor. Powered by a Pratt & Whitney R2800 radial, reaching around 620 kilometers per hour, it dominated the Pacific Air War from its introduction in 1943. Its pilots achieved kill ratios against Japanese opponents that reflected both the aircraft's quality and the declining experience level of Japanese aviators. It became the primary instrument of American carrier air superiority in the war's decisive Central Pacific campaign. The Vought F4U Corsair. The Corsair was developed around the most powerful engine available, the Pratt & Whitney R2800, producing a fighter of exceptional speed, nearly 720 kilometers per hour, at the cost of a long nose that limited forward visibility on carrier approaches. Initially shore-based, it became one of the most effective fighters in the Pacific in both naval and Marine Corps service. Its speed and firepower made it devastating against Japanese aircraft, and its rugged construction allowed it to absorb battle damage that would have destroyed lighter opponents. The North American P-51D Mustang Pacific. The P-51D Mustang served in the Pacific primarily as a very long-range escort fighter, accompanying B-29 bombing missions against the Japanese home islands from bases in the Mariana Islands. Its range, extended by drop tanks, made it the only single-engine fighter capable of covering the distance from Iwo Jima to Japan and back. Over Japan, it met the last generation of Japanese interceptors and proved superior in all but the lowest altitude turning engagements. It represented the mature expression of American long-range fighter design applied to the Pacific's unique distance requirements. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning Pacific. The P-38 was the Pacific theater's most important long-range fighter for much of the Middle War period. Its twin-engine configuration gave it the range that single-engine fighters could not match across Pacific distances, and its concentrated nose armament was effective against both aircraft and ground targets. It flew the mission that killed Admiral Yamamoto in April 1943, a 1,000-mile round trip requiring precise navigation over open ocean. In the hands of pilots like Richard Bong and Tommy Maguire, it became the mount of the highest-scoring American aces of the war. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress Pacific. The B-29 was designed specifically for the Pacific War, with the range to reach Japan from distant island bases and the altitude to operate above most Japanese interceptors. Pressurized, Powered by 4 Wright R3350 radials with turbo superchargers, it reached speeds near 575 kilometers per hour at high altitude. It conducted the strategic bombing campaign against Japan from the Mariana Islands, eventually shifting to low-altitude incendiary attacks that proved devastatingly effective against Japanese cities. It delivered the atomic weapons that ended the war. The Consolidated B-24 Liberator, Pacific. The B-24's long range made it the preferred heavy bomber for much of the Pacific theater, where distances routinely exceeded the B-17's practical radius. It flew anti-shipping missions, strategic bombing, and maritime patrol across the Southwest Pacific and Central Pacific theaters. Its Davis wing efficiency at cruise altitude sustained range over the Pacific distances that Pacific operations demanded. Operating from bases in Australia, New Guinea, and eventually the Philippines, it struck Japanese targets across the entire Western Pacific perimeter. The Grumman TBF Avenger. The TBF Avenger was the primary American carrier-based torpedo bomber, designed after the inadequacy of earlier types was exposed at the Battle of Midway. Powered by a Wright Cyclone, it carried a torpedo or bomb load in an internal weapons bay and reached around 440 kilometers per hour. Rugged and reliable, it served throughout the Pacific from 1942 onward, flying torpedo attacks, level bombing, and anti-submarine missions from carrier decks. Its internal weapons bay and crew protection made it a significant advance over the Devastator it replaced. The Douglas SBD Dauntless. The SBD Dauntless was the dive bomber that turned the tide at Midway, sinking 4 Japanese fleet carriers in a single day. Powered by a Wright Cyclone radial and reaching around 410 kilometers per hour, it was not fast, but its accuracy in the dive was exceptional. Its range exceeded that of contemporary Japanese carrier aircraft, giving American task forces an offensive reach that Japanese commanders underestimated. It remained the primary American carrier dive bomber until 1944, accumulating a combat record disproportionate to its modest performance specifications. The Curtiss SB-2C Helldiver. The SB-2C Helldiver replaced the Dauntless as the primary American carrier dive bomber from late 1943. Larger, faster, and with a greater bomb load, it reached around 475 kilometers per hour and carried its weapons in an internal bay. It was operationally troublesome in its early service, suffering from handling and structural problems that delayed its introduction. Once these were resolved, it flew the major carrier strikes of the war's final phase, participating in the destruction of Japanese naval power at Leyte Gulf and in the strikes on the Japanese home islands. The Mitsubishi G4M Betty. The Mitsubishi G4M was Japan's primary land-based naval bomber, designed for the extreme range that Pacific operations demanded at the cost of structural protection. Its light construction and large fuel capacity gave it a range of over 4,000 kilometers, but its unprotected fuel tanks made it extraordinarily vulnerable to fighter interception. American pilots called it the Flying Lighter for its tendency to burn when hit. It flew throughout the Pacific War despite these limitations, sinking HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse in December 1941 in the first demonstration of air power's ability to sink capital ships at sea. The Nakajima B5N Kate. The B5N Kate was Japan's carrier-based torpedo bomber at the war's opening. The aircraft that delivered the torpedo strikes at Pearl Harbor and sank several American carriers in the battles of 1942. Powered by a Nakajima Sakae radio, it was fast and capable for its era, but lacked the protection that would have sustained its crews through a longer war. By 1943, it was obsolescent as a frontline type, but it remained in service in secondary roles as production of its replacement struggled to keep pace with losses. The Aichi D3A Val. The Aichi D3A Val was Japan's carrier dive bomber at the war's opening, the aircraft responsible for more Allied warship sinkings than any other Axis type. A fixed undercarriage monoplane with elliptical wings, it was highly maneuverable for its size and extremely accurate in the dive. It struck targets from Pearl Harbor to Ceylon, demonstrating the effectiveness of the dive bombing technique in experienced hands. By the war's middle years, it was vulnerable to American fighter opposition, but it continued in service throughout the conflict in declining numbers. The Kawanishi H8K Emily. The H8K Emily was the finest maritime patrol flying boat of the war, Japanese or Allied. Powered by 4 Mitsubishi radials and reaching around 467 kilometers per hour, it was faster than many contemporary fighters and heavily armed defensively. It flew long-range reconnaissance and attack missions across the Pacific, and its range, exceeding 7,000 kilometers, made it capable of operations that no other maritime aircraft of the period could match. American pilots who attempted to intercept it found it a dangerous adversary despite its size. The Consolidated PBY Catalina Pacific. The Catalina flew more hours over the Pacific than any other Allied maritime aircraft, conducting anti-submarine patrol, convoy escort, search and rescue, and long-range reconnaissance across the entire theater. Its exceptional endurance, over 20 hours, suited the vast distances involved, and its ability to land on open water made it the primary rescue platform for downed aircrew across the Pacific. It was not fast or well-armed, but its reliability and range made it operationally indispensable from Pearl Harbor to the war's end. The Supermarine Walrus. The Supermarine Walrus amphibian served the Royal Navy in the Pacific in the search and rescue and fleet spotting roles. A biplane flying boat of elderly design, it was slow and entirely dependent on fighter protection, but its ability to land on open water and recover downed aircrew made it valuable beyond any assessment of its performance. Royal Navy carriers operating in the Pacific kept Walrus aircraft embarked for aircrew rescue, and the crews who flew them accepted the considerable personal risk involved in operating a slow, unarmed aircraft in contested waters. The Kawasaki Ki-61 Hien. The Ki-61 Hien was Japan's only inline engine fighter to see significant combat. Powered by a license-built Daimler-Benz DB601 and reaching around 590 kilometers per hour. It was faster than the Zero at medium altitude and carried heavier armament, making it a more capable interceptor against American bombers. American pilots initially misidentified it as a German or Italian type due to its inline engine configuration. It defended the Japanese home islands against B-29 raids and served in the Philippines, demonstrating that Japanese designers could produce effective inline engine fighters when the power plant was available. The Nakajima Ki-84 Hayate. The Ki-84 Hayate was Japan's finest production fighter of the war, reaching around 630 kilometers per hour and carrying 4 cannon. It was competitive with the P-51 and P-47 at medium altitude and superior to both in rate of climb. Had it entered service earlier and in greater numbers, it would have significantly challenged American air superiority in the war's final phase. Material shortages and manufacturing quality problems limited its effectiveness in service, but pilots who flew well-maintained examples acknowledged it as a genuinely world-class fighter in the Pacific context. The Pacific War was won in the air before it was decided on the ground. Every naval air force that followed was built on foundations laid between Pearl Harbor and the skies over Japan in 1945.